Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Portland Opera's Coffee Talk. My name is Priti Gandhi. I'm the Artistic Director of Portland Opera. And as we speak, we are in the middle of our performance run of the Central Park Five by Anthony Davis and Richard Wesley. And with me are 5 cast members from Central Park Five. This is one of their days off, and they are coming here to talk to you a little bit about this opera, who they are and what they do and what this opera means to them. We have 2 more performances left. If you're watching us on Thursday, we have a Thursday evening performance and a Saturday evening performance at the Newmark Theater in downtown Portland. So if you're interested in tickets, please go to portlandopera.org and you'll be able to find ticket information there. I'd like to start by having our artists introduce themselves, their names and their roles in the opera. Why don't we start with Hannah?
Hi, everyone. My name is Hannah Ludwig, and I am singing the role of the assistant DA.
How about we go to Jazmine next?
Hello, everyone. My name is Jazmine Olwalia, and I am singing the role of Sharonne Salaam.
Elliott.
Hello, my name is Elliott Paige, and I'm singing the role of Antron McCrae's.
Nathan.
Hi, I'm Nathan Granner, and I'm playing the role of Korey Wise.
Last but certainly not least, Victor.
Hey guys, my name is Victor Ryan Robertson from Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm playing the role of Raymond Santana.
Thank you all. So we've got a lot of questions for you, but before we start, it might help for some of our audiences to get a quick summary of what the Central Park Five is about. It's based on a true story that happened in the 1980s. It was extremely public, lots of international attention. Elliott, why don't you give us a quick summary of what this opera is about before we dive in?
Sure. So this opera is about an injustice that happened in 1989 where 5 Black and brown teenagers were arrested and wrongfully convicted of raping and assaulting a woman in Central Park. Throughout the story, you'll find different characters appear that you might recognize, such as Donald Trump. In that time period, unfortunately, ads were taken out against the children, asking to bring back the death penalty and things like this. You'll also see the assistant DA featured, as well as an officer featured who helped in the coercion of the children, saying that they did this act, which they did not do. So what happens is the kids end up getting convicted between 7 to 13 years. And toward the end of that 13-year sentence, Matias Reyes confesses to assaulting the woman. And in turn, it's proven that this is true through DNA evidence. The teenagers, which are now adults at this time, ended up taking a lawsuit with New York City, which they won, and were exonerated from the crimes that they did not commit.
Thank you, Elliott. That was a very concise summary of an incredibly densely packed opera with so many layers of messages, subtext, so much that we need to know. So my first question to you all is, you're all opera singers. You sing standard repertoire, traditional repertoire, and new work. And I'd love to have all of you pipe in with your observations about, first of all, the differences between singing something that is what we know from the traditional canon, things like Carmen, Butterfly, Aida, Marriage of Figaro, as opposed to this incredible breadth of work coming up with very different sounds, a different style of composing, all of that. I'd love to start with, Nathan, why don't you start us off and giving us some observations about the differences between singing traditional versus new work?
Sure, and thank you so much for asking. I feel like one of the big differences between a traditional canon, the magic flute, and new works is the word acting. There's a lot of acting that you must do in modern opera. I'm not saying that doesn't happen with our traditional pieces. It's just the diction, clarification, plot lines are super important. More important in modern opera. There are more words to convey this story. And also the music is quite a bit different. Most people, when they think of modern opera, are thinking that it's gonna be this squeeze squawk, blah, 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 and atonal. But that sentiment has changed quite a bit. in this particular piece, you will get some atonalism where there's no center pitch, but you will get a lot of really fantastic melodies and great harmonies. So composers are really looking at that these days, and not only giving you a great story that's more kind of relevant to today. And it's not that say Le Nozze di Figaro isn't relevant to today. I mean, it's relevant to the United States of America in that the composer was a huge part of the Age of Enlightenment happening, which is partially what formed the United States of America. But today's stories, we have so many more issues, and we also have a massive diaspora of people and cultures and languages here in America that we want to capture these stories too. And this particular piece, the Central Park Five, I think captures a really major point in American history, even in our current history, and does it with music that explains itself to you in the underpinnings, the orchestra, but also the lines themselves, the text, the libretto really speaks volumes. So that's a little bit of my take on modern opera and the difference between that and romantic period opera, which is just, I like singing the same style in both, like bel canto, beautiful singing, but in modern opera, there's a lot more things that you can do with your voice.
Thank you for that, Nathan. Absolutely. And I'm thinking about, for instance, Hannah's lines. Hannah has so many interjections. You don't really get an aria per se, but you get to interject with every character. And so you have to know the entire score. And I think I overheard you in rehearsals or someone else saying that you see the score pass by you as you're singing. So you make sure that you're always on track. What was that preparation process for you like?
I have never done more score work on an opera than this. I don't have a background in doing contemporary works. Most of my work is bel canto and the standard stuff. So this was a big jump for me, getting me out of my comfort zone, but I really wanted to do it because of the story, because of what it was. And in terms of my prep for it, once I got the score and I looked at it and I went, okay. And I basically coached this with Reese Revak, who works at Curtis Institute of Music, and we worked on it for 3 months, and basically me drilling it every day and looking at it every day for multiple hours. But it is one of those things I learned at my time in studying at the Academy of Vocal Arts. Maestro Christopher Makasoris, he was the one who talked about looking at the score as you perform. It's almost as if you're having like a running photographic memory, making sure like you know all the counts, you know all the beats, you know where the bar line is, you know exactly when the meter changes. And you also know every single, like you said, every single interjection. Because one of the things that's really wonderful, and speaking kind of bouncing off what Nathan said, in acting, this show is very much like a play. It's structured very much in that there's not a lot, there's no real rhyming in terms of like a libretti that you would find in like Italian or German or French opera. It's all in real time. The syllabification of words is really disjunct, and it's very much similar to how we speak English. And so you have to memorize it as if it's a running script. And that was the only way that I knew how to do this in terms of getting it ready in time. But this was the most work I've ever done on a score. But I will say, I'm really thankful for how much work I did. Every day I feel it more and more in my body. And it's gotten to a place where it's very comfortable to sing it, even though I don't feel emotionally comfortable every time I do it. But it has been a really good challenge, and I'm very honored to be doing this show. Even though my character is a little less than, yeah.
Understood. I can't imagine it as comfortable for you as a person to inhabit the role that you are, but being a part of the story and serving the story, of course, is one of our jobs. So thank you so much, because you're doing that so well. And Jazmine, Elliott, and Vic, so you all also have, Jazmine, you get actually kind of a mini aria in this, and you're doing ensembles, and you get a mini aria where you sing it so beautifully, and it's such an emotional moment. How on earth do you prepare for that moment after the intensity of this opera, and they're singing about they're trying to frame my son? I mean, everything kind of stops and focuses in on that moment, and it's really heart-wrenching.
Yeah. I definitely, after watching it, and listening to it all the way through, I was just like, wow, it's the ultimate moment of release for the show, because up until that point, it's been tension, it's been, driving rhythms, it's been, you don't really get a throughout melody for any of the other characters, more of the like atonal sections, lots of tritones, and we get this like one moment of like clarity, and it's indescribable, especially over the course of the show, because I just completely let myself like get in it. I can't, think about like, oh, is this like vowel sounding just correct? No. It is definitely all about that emotional release, and to have the opportunity to give that to the audience and also to my fellow cast members who are like, they're working hard. And so just to be able to live in this moment of like, yes, it's still stressful, but there is still beauty. Like we still have line, we still having like some sort of, catharsis within that. And then the text is like a whole other thing, because you have this moment, the text is, they're trying to frame my son to lock him up and end him right here. And those, like, you haven't really gotten to see a lot of Sharonne up until that point. You get to see her, she has another little moment towards the end, but this is the first moment we really get to see her on stage alone and kind of speaking for all of the parents and all of their frustrations, because she's, kind of like caught in this place where she's like, I don't know what's going on, what's happening, with my son, and truly just in a place of helplessness. And it speaks a lot to, these situations, unfortunately, still are happening and still do happen. And it is unfortunate the way some things are like portrayed by the media and, the way we get some information. But these families are just caught because the system is supposed to, there's a line that says, the system has to work. And the system is supposed to be working, but in, society's mind, it is, because the boys are criminals. The system did what it was supposed to do, but not for everybody.
Right. Thank you for that. And that leads me to my next question. Of course, Victor and Nathan, you're playing two of the 5 men who are wrongfully convicted. So of course, the emotional import of that, not just singing difficult music, not just being a performer, doing what you've got to do, your job on stage, and then the emotional, it must bring it home in a way which what is that like for you, knowing that you're serving this incredibly important story for the roles that you're playing right now? Victor, why is it so important that this is on stage right now, pandemic, after George Floyd, everything that we're seeing, and your own personal feelings about you being in that story? There's just so much to unwrap in that. Can you give us some thoughts about that?
Well, yeah, and that harkens back to the earlier statement of what are the differences between doing new work and standard rep. And the main thing is it's your fingerprint that you're putting on it. You're not being compared to anyone vocally. Like you're not doing a Bohème and they're like, well, I remember Pavarotti in '74 sung it in Verona. You're doing your own interpretation of it. And there's so much responsibility with that. And that's actually, it may be a bit of a heavier weight because the rest is a subjective. So this, you're really setting the tone for generations to come. Hopefully this will be in heavy rotation for the next decades and decades to come. And to start it to, like I've been fortunate enough in the past few years to help create new pieces with the conductor in the room, composer in the room, which is crazy because they're all very giving. And you would think that they wouldn't want you to touch their masterpieces, but they need that help. They need to know how it fits in your voice, how easily it could fit in your voice, and maybe somebody with a different voice, but they learn so much from the your initial interpretation. But it's really crazy because when we're doing that scene, the interrogation scene, I think the interrogation scene really is the heart of the piece. musically, it's unbelievably difficult. And like Hannah said, you have to really study every day, practice it. Like today, I'm still going to practice, go through my motions and go through the difficult passages. You've got to do that because it's going so fast. The message is so clear, but it needs, and we're all working in unison, and we're all up on stage under intense pressure. So what you feel from an audience member, oh my God, these boys are under an intense situation. No, it is probably being interpreted because we're in an intense musical situation here. And it helps that the tension is so, you cannot miss a line. You've got to be on top of everyone's line. And if someone comes in the wrong time or just happened to miss a line, you've got to be, it's very difficult. This is a very difficult opera to just jump into, just jump in and find your line. But to close your question, there's a statement that says, when the diamonds, like just by chance you cross the diamonds with the pearls. And I feel like two days ago, we literally did that. The audience got it. They wanted to get, they were receptive, but they got it. And I've done a billion shows, and you know when the audience gets it, you know when they love it, you know when they're on that journey with you, and they were on it. And I was literally choked up twice. And my teacher said, never allow a show to get to you like that. But it got me twice, and out of nowhere, tears are forming. And when you walk on stage and you get the reception, but then I had a moment where I didn't want it. It's not about me, it's about my character. So it really felt weird accepting an applause for the first time in my life. It felt really weird accepting an applause for doing the role of Raymond Santana, one of the 5 who were wrongly accused. If anything, this should go, it has nothing to do with me. I'm just telling the story. So I did not smile. A friend of mine was like, why aren't you smiling? You're on stage bowing. I had no reason to smile. It's really about the story. And thank God that Portland, you guys have done such a good interpretation of this piece. I can't believe it. The projections, everything is working. And it helps us to know when we get the energy from the audience, instant feedback. So I can't thank you, and I really can't thank you enough. It's been a phenomenal experience so far. I am eagerly looking forward to Thursday, killing it again and keeping the same intensity.
Thank you so much for that. Yes, Nataki Garrett, who is our stage director and the artistic director of the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, has created a stunning, stunning piece on stage. Those projections, when I first saw that during Tech Week,
unbelievable,
it blew me away. Just blew me away. But what is wonderful about all of you and your work is that you are absolutely meeting that stunning production with your authenticity and your singing, your preparation, and your total commitment to telling this important story right now. So thank you all for that. We've had Anthony Davis, the composer, in the room for the last couple of weeks of rehearsals, and then he came to the first 2 performances, which, as you mentioned, it's always an amazing thing to have the composer of the music with you. You can go and talk to him and say, why did you write it like this? What can I do with this here? What was your motivation? And of course, we don't have a dial Mozart by phone and to ask him what he was thinking when he, did one of those arias in our passaggio. And really, why did you do that to us as a singer? Because that just doesn't sound, it's not fun to sing right there, right? Elliott, what has it been like for you to have Anthony in the room as a resource for your character, for your music, and for your inspiration?
It's been really fabulous. It really has helped me to understand the piece even more, because when you look at it kind of at face value, you're like, whoa, what is going on here? There's so many time signatures and like changes and all these things kind of woven together. And then you hear it with the orchestra. And then you're like, oh, okay, the pieces are fitting together even more. And then you hear it with the Kurzweil, which is a specialized instrument, right? And then all these pieces come together. And then talking with Anthony, you understand even more because he's a jazz musician. He was originally a jazz musician first, right? Like that's the meat and potatoes. And so you hear so much of that influence in the music within this operatic space, this post-bebop jazz kind of fusion of opera, classical singing, that is seen through a lens of a jazz person. And so that's been really cool to hear kind of his stories and some of the like inspiration behind some of the lines. And I'm working on his other opera, X, The Life and Times of Malcolm X, because that's coming up for me next. And hearing that was written in 1984, I believe, which is so interesting because it's so close to 1989 when this story took place, right? And you hear the influences of that opera on this opera. You hear so many of these little kind of like Anthony Davis traits. And so that's been really cool too, to see how his style evolved from there to here, into this place where the music is so influenced by the text, that sometimes it's like real true, dialogue set over instrumentals. So it's been really great just getting to know him and seeing him in rehearsals, and him being able to like kind of adjust things and change things as we go has been really, really great. And again, like everyone else said, I love working with new composers and working on pieces with them because it's a different experience. It's a really enriching experience because you really get to see what's making everything kind of tick behind the scenes. And you get to see what they want to do with the style of the piece, right? Because this has those jazz influences, there's some things that we can do vocally to help influence and explore more within the story. So that's been really great.
Thank you for that. And Anthony, of course, is also a lovely, lovely human being. It's just been lovely to have his presence in the rehearsal room and at performances. And he has been one of your biggest applausers at the performances. He was just so happy with it all. Thank you for that. Yeah, yeah. Nathan, tell us what inspires you about doing this piece, and what would you want audiences to know about what it means to you to be able to present this story? You know, there's a lot of talk right now about trauma opera and BIPOC stories. And one thing we're all becoming very aware of is, you know, so much of social justice stories, they do center around trauma because we want to bring it to light. We want people to understand that this happens. And yet we also want to give a message of hope, of a resolution, that there is hope in the future. What does that mean for you when you're looking at BIPOC stories and these conversations we see on social media about trauma opera, and then opera about hope in our own communities? You know, that's a very open-ended question, but I would love to know your thoughts about that.
Sure, thank you, Priti. I feel like we are living inside the opera right now. The thing about Central Park 5 is not only was it about a story that happened in 1989, when I was about the same age as my character, Korey Wise. I was living in Kansas City, and just hanging out as a kid and seeing these strange things going on in New York, the fear, the fires, the gangs, the violence that was happening in New York. And from my perspective, you know, it was terrible. It was a horrible thing. And that these young kids were doing such terrible things. And I didn't want to go to New York. It was too scary for me. I barely wanted to go to Kansas City, being a small kid from Iowa, you know, so that was enough for me. And now living in this day and age when these things are happening right now, it's not just about these 5 exonerated men. It is about everyone who has been wrongfully convicted of crimes many of them couldn't even possibly have done, and yet were coerced into signing these confessions. There's a case that's going on right now with the Innocence Project. There's a woman who was coerced into saying that she murdered her baby, and there's not a possible way that she could have done that. She's on death row right now. So when we are doing an opera such as this, it's imperative because there's actual crisis. There is actual trauma here. And let me just talk about yesteryear's operas. And I mentioned The Barber of Seville. I mentioned, a lot of these operas. Opera is about big dramas, the hugest things that we go through in our lives as society, as societies. And now that we're grasping the fact that it's not just a Western European mindset that we're in, it is all of us on this tiny blue dot together flying around in infinite space. We have to take care of our own selves. We have to take care of our environment. We have to take care of our people, our neighbor, our families, and each other as we, wait for anything to happen as we live our lives in joy and wonder. So I would say that, yeah, okay, there's trauma in new opera, but when is there not trauma in opera? It is about trauma. It is about these moments colliding, and we get to at least experience a semblance of them on the stage as a live thing. When we premiered Central Park 5 in Long Beach, I did not understand the realities of the situation. I met a guy named Gary Tyler who spent 20 years on death row and 20 more years in regular prison for a crime that he couldn't commit. And he was super cool with that aspect after he got out. But it really brought it home. And then we got a chance to meet the actual exonerated 5 at a luncheon. And, you know, yeah, they got a $40 million payout, and they, you know, all these great things happened to them. They met Oprah. There's like shows that are being made about them. But, you know, they had to live through that, and their lives were taken away. And not to mention the fact that we do have a woman who was brutally attacked in Central Park. I mean, we don't really talk about that in this opera, and we should. But the thing is, there's so much to, as you say, Priti, unpack with this. And and as Vic was saying, it's a great honor and a privilege and a weight that we must witness to portray these real life characters. I'm not saying it's a labor of love. There's an actual weight to it. If anything is going on in the world, like we just went to war, you know, like Ukraine is being attacked by Russia, and any of these outside elements are actually affecting us putting on this show because of the trauma that we are feeling right now. Just as actors, just as singers, just as people trying to portray our characters in a light in which they were feeling, and which you, the audience, can understand how these folks were feeling and how it's happening continuously today. And there is hope. You know, we are spreading the word. Things are changing. Our audience members, we've had so many audience people come up to us and say, oh my God, this is my first opera that I've seen. And I love this piece. And I'll let anybody else speak to that. I know a lot of you have had these chances to talk with our patrons.
Thank you, Nathan. There's so much in there that I wish we could just continue to dive in on. Yes, Jazmine, please.
Just to continue on with what was said, specifically in regards to Black trauma in opera, I think that where we are right now in the opera industry is, in order to tackle a problem, you must first acknowledge it. And I think that is currently the stage that we are at.
Amen.
We are just now getting to the point where we're acknowledging, you know, there's racism in opera, there's fat phobia in opera, there is homophobia in opera. There are these things that are preventing people who love this art form, people who love theater, from not only being on stage, but even being a part of audiences, because they know what's going on behind the scenes and they don't feel welcome in this community. So I feel like we are still at the level of acknowledgement. And unfortunately for us singers, that means the stories that are being told are going to be traumatic for us. It is unfortunate, especially for, you know, some of us who are a little bit younger, that a lot of our work is going to be harder. It's going to be telling these stories of Black pain. But in that, I have to believe that on the other side of this, we were going to balance the scales, and we're going to get, because after acknowledgement, then we get acceptance into this community. We're going to get stories about Black hope, and we're seeing some of them. But it just needs to go even further, so that it's not just every time something comes across my email, it's like, oh, and here's another story about you gonna be just crying for 3 hours. So
Yes, it's true. It's true.
It's important, and it's different from, I will say it's different from your normal operatic tragedies, because I mean, you know, we play kings and queens and dukes and duchesses and all these, you know, fancy people. It's so far removed from what we know. Whereas with a story like this, where our parents were alive, we were alive during this story. It's so close that it makes it all the more effective when we have to do this, you know, a couple of nights a week, and we have to go to that place. So I think that's what makes it different. And that's what makes it all the more effective when, like Vic, we do have those nights where we allow ourselves to emotionally go there, and the audience responds accordingly.
Yes. And as an artist, that's who you are, isn't it? You are reflecting that to the audience so that they can feel that. You're taking them on a journey. And to your point, Jazmine, at the end of the opera, it does end on a note of hope. After, you know, the world is ours. Hold your head high. And there's moments of hope in that music. And I'm so grateful to Anthony for including that as a way to close the opera, so that we leave feeling the hope of, after having experienced this story with all of you, that we can walk out and think, but there is hope and I can be a part of that change. And I think that's something also to remember and to highlight about this opera. And Nathan, to what you said about, you know, relevance and art, and Jazmine, dukes and duchesses and fantasy opera, you know, it's so funny because I go back and forth with the word relevance in opera, because to me, art is relevant on so many levels. Absolutely. Art is relevant for the stories of social justice. Art is relevant to reflect real life stories back at us that we are having a hard time seeing. Art is relevant for entertainment. Opera is relevant for upliftment of the soul with beautiful music. Sometimes you want to go because you just want to hear something that fills your soul with gorgeous music. And sometimes you want to go because you want to be shaken loose from your convictions about something and confront a story that you know is going to be difficult, but it's going to add to who you are as a human being. So to me, relevance, it encompasses all of those items, all of those things that we want to talk about. And of course, you as artists know that because you're playing so many of those kinds of roles in so many different stories. I feel like we could talk so much longer. There's so much to ask you all. I'd love to end this on a lighter note. And I'd love to ask all of you how you're spending your last week in Portland, anything that you do to help prepare for the opera, for a show day. Let's just do a quick round robin here. Hannah, why don't you tell me, how are you spending this week? Are you enjoying Portland? And what are some things that you do on performance days to help prep you? I know there's a lot there, so pick something.
I will say I have really enjoyed on my days off spending time with my colleagues. We have had many really fun excursions, and I'm really grateful that we've really bonded as a cast, because that's been one of my favorite parts of this whole experience. I love Pals. Pals is great. Been there quite a bit. Yeah, and in terms of the when I get ready for show days, this opera takes a lot out of me, and I'm sure my colleagues can agree to that. I'm exhausted after the show. I really do need that rest day in between. So I just make sure I get a lot of sleep. I make sure I hydrate quite a bit. I make sure I review the show, and just get into this place where I can focus 150% on everything that I'm doing, because there's a lot going on in this piece. And so I just have to really be in the right mindset.
Indeed. Victor, what about you?
Well, I've been playing a lot of tennis lately. So there's a great facility here for that indoors, what you need here. And I just saw the worst movie ever last night, which was Death on the Nile. Destroyed Agatha Christie's version. Oh my God, it is beyond hideous. It's beyond hideous. So I'm going to try to make that up tonight by seeing something good. Maybe I'll watch Queen's Gambit again. I don't know.
Thanks for the tip. Elliott, how about you?
Yeah, it's been a great time here. I've definitely got the chance to kind of get out and explore a little bit. Amazing restaurants and cultural spaces. I'm not usually a foodie, but I feel like Portland has turned me into one because they have some good stuff here. Also, just getting, like Hannah said, just getting to know everyone and creating these bonds has been so wonderful and helpful for us. I think because the story is so intense, to have that connection outside of the story is super helpful, so that when the story is over, when we come off stage, we can hug each other and say, I care about you, I appreciate you, I love you, outside of how intense it is in those bonds of the stage. So that's been great for me.
That's really nice to hear. I'm so glad that everybody is bonding that way, because it also serves a story too, doesn't it? When you have that strong bond with your castmates, you all get together and you're a team when you're up there on stage. And it shows, people feel that, don't they? Nathan, how about you?
Well, I'm a serial entrepreneur. So off camera, I'm producing something. Right now I'm working on some kind of Bluetooth device that I can't talk about. And it's taking a while. And also, this is new, like in COVID times, we lost our work. So I'm also working on like Alfredo, doing another role. So I'm trying to get out and seeing the air. Went to the Shooter's brewery yesterday and just like planted my butt down, and we had some great libations and some very, very awesome conversations too. So I'm trying to do every last thing in life before I retire, or even think about retiring. It's a long time. So otherwise I'd be rollerblading. I'm a rollerblader, but you can see by my physique that really hasn't happened much recently.
Thank you, Nathan. All right, if you rollerblade, you're just not allowed to break any limbs. We still have 2 shows left. Just remember that.
Yeah, yes.
Yes. Thank you very much.
But it's all good.
Jasmine, how about you?
I've had a fun time in Portland, going to different coffee places.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of my thing, and getting to know a city, and y'all know your coffee, like it's good. That's kind of what I've been doing on my days off, in addition to laying down, because like Hannah, the show also takes a lot out of me. So I'm just like, we're gonna just lay, we're gonna lounge, and also watching whatever is like new on Netflix. So last night I just watched The Tinder Swindler.
Just added that to my to watch list. Just added it.
Good, it's good. But doing things like that to kind of like let my mind wander and go somewhere else for a bit has been super helpful over the course of this project. And then on show day, bringing it back in, doing score study before performances, having a little coffee, just a little bit though, and lots of water, and allowing myself to take that time that day. I usually wake up in the afternoon and then start my day from there, but I try to take it easy, especially on show days.
I remember that from my career. Show days, slept very, very late on a show day. Absolutely important, because after a show's over, it takes about 2 hours for that adrenaline high to drop, doesn't it? So you're in bed by what, 2 o'clock maybe, if you're lucky, 2 a.m. And that's when the adrenaline finally allows you to sleep right. I feel like I could talk to you all for hours. I just want to thank you so much for taking part in this. It's just been a joy to have you all here. You're just lovely, lovely human beings and artists. And thank you for bringing all that you are to this story. For those of you watching, please remember, again, we have 2 more performances left, Thursday and Saturday evening. We will also be filming it for Portland Opera on screen. So please go to portlandopera.org if you would like to catch it online, if you're not able to join us in person. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your week. We'll be so sad to see you go. And I will see you all at the performances this weekend. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Bye.